Hello and welcome back to All Things Money. I'm your host, David Blain. During today's show, we're talking about some of the things that we'd like young people to focus on. As I mentioned in the previous segment, I get a lot of enjoyment working with our children of clients that I've seen grow up from age 7 and 8 to now out in the world working, and I see we've been able to help some of them establish these good money habits as young adults that will serve them well throughout life. Also, if you're in your 50s, 60s, or 40s and you're not doing some of these things, feel free to go ahead. It's never too late with life expectancies. I just talked with our 98-year-old client the other day. We have another client who we help their father who's 99. So there's plenty of years left to pick up some new financial habits. So we were ending last segment talking about debt, staying out of debt, credit card debt, car debt, auto loan, consumer debt, things like that. Just don't do it. Stay out of debt as much as possible. There's a lot of talk about credit scores and massaging your credit scores and how to get a good credit score and how not to. And I'm not a big proponent of that. I think you should review your credit report mostly for identity theft. But the reality is if you go out and the only thing you should really be borrowing money for is a house. Other than that, credit score does not matter. You should be paying cash for most things. And if you go and you buy a house and you put down a reasonable down payment, 20, 30% down payment, you are going to get financed for a house, unless you have something hugely wrong. But don't go out and run up big credit card. I've heard all kinds of crazy things about, well, I got this credit card balance of, $30,000 because I'm building my credit score up. I'm not an expert in that. We deal with mostly people that have a fair amount of money, but that just doesn't seem right. We want you to save and invest in money so you don't have to worry about that too much. Emergency fund. There's a lot of information out there about emergency funds. Sort of the standard line is to have 3 to 6 months of spending needs in an emergency fund, in a bank, in a money market account, something like that. That's really, really conservative, 3 to 6 months. If you have other sources of money that you can have, the real reason for that is to keep you from going into debt. So if you lose your job or your house has a leak on the roof, you have to replace your roof leak, things like that. Of course, if you lose your job, your income will be down drastically, and there's some other, borrowing money from taking money out of your investments and things like that. When you're in a lower tax bracket can work out okay, but especially if you have any sort of diversified portfolio, probably in that portfolio somewhere you have some type of fixed income, some type of bonds. And so if you have 3 to 6 months worth of spending needs, already invested somewhere other than, the stock market, there's no need to hold another 3 to 6 months cash outside. It also depends on your employer. Myself being a West Point graduate, spending many years in the military, a military person does not need 3 to 6 months of spending money in the bank. The likelihood that they walk into the office one day and get a pink slip and says you're out of the Marines or Army or whatever, that's not going to happen. So the threat of layoff is extremely low. If you're self-employed and your business goes up and down, your income, sure, maybe have a little bit of extra cash. But this is something that I think really needs to be to the specific person, takes into account your spending level, your job prospects, other assets that you may have. But the point is to have a plan. Okay, this is the key, not necessarily whether it's 3 months or 6 months or what, but it's to have a plan. Okay, my car breaks down, I need a new engine. Where's the money coming from? My mother who lives in Hawaii is very sick. I would like to go see her. Where am I going to get the money for that plane ticket? I lose my job. Where's the money going to come from? That's the key, is having a plan, not necessarily the dollar amount is very specific to the person. We already talked about student loans a little bit. Just be careful of the student loans that you're not over borrowing. My general rule of thumb is don't borrow more than you will make in your first year that you get a job. So for example, if you are going to school and getting a degree in social work, you should not have $100,000 worth of student loans. That's way out of line. If you're going to medical school and are going to become a surgeon, having $100,000 of student loans is not as bad. So just keep that rule of thumb in mind. Start saving and investing now. I remember when I was, probably 10 or 11 years, my dad took me down to the local bank and we got a CD at the bank. Of course, at the time, this was the late 70s, early 80s. CDs were paying like 14–15%. So, you may not want to do a CD today, but the point is start saving early and often. The Roth IRAs are a tremendous investment for a young person. You're not generally in a very high tax bracket, so you don't need the big tax deduction from 401k or things like that. So if you have $5,000, put it in a Roth and let that money grow tax-free for years and years and years. Some of the dollars that I invested as a young child, from newspaper route and things like that, are still compounding today. And that's where the magic of compound interest really starts to take hold. After 15, 20, 25 years, it does take on sort of a magical quality. We're coming up on our second break. When we come back, we'll continue talking about some financial savvy moves for young adults. I'm your host, David Blain, and we'll be right back.